She's in there just crying. Oh, there's her head.
You flushed it?
There
Thank
we
you, Papa.
Oh my. I always come back in the best conversation. Oh, I'm recording, right? Okay. Right?
Oh, look.
Yes. Okay. Let me go pull this back up where we were here. Okay.
Enough, ain't she?
No, I had to
Yeah,
reboot. Let's see.
maybe she was having a bad dream. I don't know. But sometimes she does that whenever she wants me to get her.
She ever wake you up in the middle of the night?
She has once. And I just put her on my chest and rock her until she goes to sleep.
So she don't bite you.
No.
That's awesome.
What is it you're talking about? A squirrel?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
She's sitting there crying. It sounds just like a cat meowing. It's crazy.
Oh God.
Like a little baby kitten. Meow, meow. That's how she sounds.
My God. Can you like keep her
crazy.
forever? Like.
Well, yeah, her back legs are paralyzed, so I don't ever have to release her in the wild.
Oh.
But how do you keep her alive? Like, what does she eat?
She's so picky. Oh my gosh. What have I not tried to feed this squirrel? But she basically likes granola. She loves blueberries.
Huh.
Flowers, roses.
Flowers?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Oh.
Peanuts.
Oh my gosh, she will try to jump you over a cashew. That's her favorite. She just growls at you as soon as she makes contact.
Well, I'm glad she ain't here because I got some on the table.
I gave her one a while ago. She's wanting me to get her out. I know that's what it is. We usually go outside and walk around, and she's pitching a fit. So
she likes being in the grass.
Yeah, but yeah, she'll go all over the place. She's fearless.
I'm asking her if she can send y'all some paper with the with your calipers so that you'll have paper to practice on.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Mm-hmm. It's because you really need to have it. If she's gonna mail that anyways. Okay. Okay, so where were we? We were here, right? We were on, what were we looking at? Oh, here. So we were talking about segment QRS interval or complex, right? Had we gotten that far? Yes. So QRS interval, it's narrow, right? It has to be less than 0.12 seconds. So when you go to measure, if it's not less than that, then you know that's what? Abnormal. We'll get to those measurements, but again, it's all knowing what's normal so that you can figure out what's not normal. So y'all can see this, my screen, right? The PowerPoint? Okay. So QRS interval is this complex. Now, if I say to you, what is the R to R interval without knowing anything, you already know that this is your R, right? Your QRS, right? Complex. So if I say, what's the R to R interval, that's going to be the count or between these two R's. Does that make sense? So if I say, what's the R to R interval, you should be able to count it, but right now you don't know how to count it, right? So you would just say it's from the area from one R here to the next one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So R to R interval is that space from one to the next. On a normal EKG, should that space be consistently the same?
Yes.
Yes, because if your heartbeat is regular at 60, it's going to march right out every single time. So this space should always be consistent. If this is 0.12, if this is like 2.5 seconds, then the next one should be 2.5 seconds. Do you think it's a problem if this is 2.5 and the next one's only 1? Do you have another complex right here? Is that a problem? Yes.
Yes.
Your heart's not beating regularly. Don't y'all like my drawing? Anyways, so R to R interval is the space from one R to the next, right? Everybody get that? Your calipers, when you get them, you will see they should march right out. The space on your calipers should march out. And you could even do it with a piece of paper, because if you can march it out on your paper from one to the next, it's regular. So if you can imagine your heartbeat is regular. Right now, if everybody felt the heartbeat, mine's probably 76 or 8. But it's regular. It's not all over the place. It's very regular. It marches out across this paper. My mother, who has atrial fib, hers is very irregular. It's like beating, it goes fast, and then it's regular, and then it goes fast again. Is it marching across the paper? No. It's ridiculous. So you could say this is regular. So when I'm asking, when you talk about it being regular rate, or you measure right here between these two QRS complexes, the top of the R to the top of the R. That's your R to R interval. Anybody have questions about that? It's the interval between one R wave and the next R wave. So ST segment, we talked about that. That's on the EKG. That's that segment between the J point, which is what they call the end of the QRS. You don't see it a lot, but you do have to acknowledge what it is. So if I ask you what that J point is, it's the end of the QRS to the beginning of the T wave. So my ST segment is the end of this QRS complex, right? Because here's your S right here, right? So the end of that is right here to the beginning of the T. So just know that this S wave, the end of that is called your J. I don't know why they don't make more of it or put it on here, but this point right here, well, what the heck? This point, well, it ain't working, is your J point right here. It's the end of the QRS complex. Oh, are you kidding me? Crap, it did it again. Are y'all there? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it worked. Huh. So you see this J, this is your J here, is what I'm talking about. Nope.
Yeah.
My computer is having issues today. I don't know what's wrong. So y'all see this though, right? Oh. Does that make sense? What the J is? What is the J point?
At the ST segment.
The what?
ST segment.
That would be the ST segment. What is the J point?
It's before that.
It's the segment between the J point, which is the end of the QRS. Y'all see that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's here, the end of this QRS right here. See it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the hell. I'm gonna have to reload this computer. So that's the J point. Like I said, it's not something you have to measure, but if anybody ever says to you what it is, just know it's the end of the QRS. But your ST segment is what? So what is the ST segment?
What's the end of the QRS?
The segment between the end of the QRS and the beginning of the T wave.
In the
ST
beginning.
segment is going to be very important. So we know it, you know how to label all those parts. So again, do you remember how the paper has to always run at the same speed?
Mm-hmm.
What speed is that?
25.
Right. And why is that? Because it gives us a consistent measurement. So we know what normal should look like. So if your QRS should be less than 0.12, that's because on a EKG paper at 25 millimeters per second, that's how it should look. Now, remember how we said if the doctor, once you speed it up, it widens it out. So again, it's going to be wide, but that's not normal. They want you to do that. Does that make sense? It's always going to be 25 speed because that's what it's giving us, this normal. We have to know what normal is before we can decide what it is or what's abnormal about it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the paper, it has to run at 25, right?
Right.
This EKG paper, and I'm going to get her to send y'all some, or I'll print it and send it myself. But this paper, it literally is how you're going to measure everything. So your paper is made up of these boxes that are little, tiny, and bigger. So you have all these little tiny boxes and you have these bigger boxes. And each box, remember we talked about this, for each little tiny box on that EKG paper represents 1 millimeter, right? Does you remember that? 1 millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
One little box is also equal to 0.04 seconds. So we're running this paper at 25 millimeters per second. We know universally that one little box is 0.04 seconds. So again, one little tiny box is how many millimeters per second?
One.
And one little box is how many seconds?
4.
0.04.
04.
Because if you think
04.
4, you'll get screwed up when you're trying to count. So it's always 0.4. That's your little box. Do everybody see on this paper how they're darker lines? So you've got these little tiny boxes inside the big box.
Mm-hmm.
That big box represents 5 of those little tiny boxes. So when you see your EKG paper, you know that every little box is 1 millimeter is 0.04 seconds, and every one of these bigger boxes represents 5 of those little ones. So how many seconds is that? 5 times 0.4 is
0.20.
0.20, right? So 0.20 seconds. It seems complicated. It seems like, what in the heck? Is this so much? But it really isn't. All we're doing is looking at this piece of paper. And that's what each represents. Why does it represent that? Because that's how fast it's going through the machine, 25 millimeters per second. So if we know consistently it's always supposed to go that way, then this never changes. That's why knowing the speed of the paper is key. Because if you're running this thing at 40 instead of 25, are you getting an accurate speed? Is that really 0.04? No, it changes everything. So 25 is how you run it because that's how you measure it. Everybody clear on those? Just this is, I mean, all we want to know right now is about this piece of paper. Little boxes, bigger boxes. You see here where it says 20 large boxes equals 4 seconds. So I know I can figure that out. Here's one little box that represents 5, and one little tiny one represents what? 1 box, which is 0.04. So if I have 20 of them times 0.20, that's 4 seconds. So that's a 4-second strip right here. Does that make sense how this breaks down? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. These two things will be key. So you have to know what rhythm and rate mean. I will ask you continuously, what is the rhythm and what is the rate? I always think you got to find the rate first and you got to figure out if it's regular. But again, just know what those terms mean. If I say to you, what is the heart rhythm? You're going to tell me what? Right here in front of you.
Pattern of the heartbeat.
The pattern is the rhythm. Is it normal sinus rhythm? Is it atrial fibrillation? Is it ventricular tachycardia? Is it ventricular fibrillation? Is it junctional rhythm? If I say junctional rhythm, if you don't know anything else, where do you think that rhythm's starting from?
The Purkinje thing.
Junctional rhythm. You know nothing else. Where do you think that's starting from? What
Bundle of his.
No, well, kind of. But what else?
It's before that, the,
AV junction.
yeah, the AB
Right?
junction.
That's the only other place we've used that word. So if you knew nothing else, a junctional rhythm would be a rhythm that initiated in the AV junction or the bundle of his. Exactly, Kiki. So again, what do I know automatically? What's the intrinsic rate?
40 to 60.
Right. So a junctional rhythm initiates in the AV junction or the bundle of his, and it has a rate of 40 to 60, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
using what we know already, you can kind of see where we're going with this, because everything is going to start to click in that, like, oh, okay, like, why do we need to know the intrinsic rate? Why do we need to know what? Because right just then, you guys told me what a junctional rhythm was, where it initiated, and what the rate must be, and we haven't got that far. But you know already what the flow is, what's happening in the heart, the electrical activity. So the heart rhythm is the pattern it's giving us. Normal sinus rhythm is a consistent, pretty 60 to 100 pattern on that EKG that is beautiful, and it looks like, I mean, there's nothing abnormal about it. That is normal sinus rhythm. That's the heart rhythm. So if I ask you what the rhythm is, you should be able to look at that and say, well, let me measure it. Let me look at it. Let me count it. I can tell you it's not normal, or I can tell you it's not junctional, because this is the rhythm. So rhythm is the pattern. The heart rate is exactly that, the speed at which the heart is beating. So if your rate is 60 to 100, your heart is beating 60 to 100 times a minute. Now, should it be 60 to 100? No, it should be consistent. 60 or 70 or 80 or 72. Like, yeah, it's going to go up and down, but it's not going to go from one to the other. If it's doing that, we have a problem, right? Because normal sinus rhythm is exactly that. Normal heart rate, normal rhythm. So just what do we need to know about those two terms? Exactly, just know what they are, so that when you're asked, you know, just like that. If I threw that on the test, what's junctional rhythm? Well, I know that you're talking about a pattern, and I know that junction means like junctional, AV junction or bundle of his, and I know that the intrinsic rate is 40 to 60. I mean, in multiple choice, you could probably get it right and don't even know it. I mean, really, like if you keep up with the terms and know what you're calling this. So when we go to analyze a strip, you have to know, there have to be 6 steps to this. You have to commit these 6 steps to memory. You have to start at the very beginning. So I'm going to ask you 1,000,000 times, what are the 6 steps used to analyze the EKG tracing? Hint, hint. If we have a quiz, it will be on there. I'll make sure I'm recording, right? Yes. So everybody see these 6 steps on the PowerPoint? First, we determine the rate. So that's it's simple. Don't overanalyze it. What do we need to do? I need to know what this rhythm is, what this person's heart is doing. So the very first thing I need to do is determine the heart rate. Now I know how many boxes that is. I know how many seconds each box is. So again, I could probably figure out their rate. There's a couple of different ways to do it. I'm a counter. I don't, you know, I mean, it's how you do it, but again, it has to be pretty precise. So the next thing we need to do is examine the rhythm for regularity. Is there a pattern? Is there not a pattern? Does it march out? Do my R to R intervals match exactly? Is there always a consistent amount of space between those R to Rs? I mean, if there's not, is that regular?
No.
No. So if I have, you know, 10 seconds here and 12 seconds between R to R here, that's not regular. Regular marches out every time. If I can put my pin on the EKG and I measure between R to R and it's right here at this little thing that holds it on your shirt or whatever, every time from R to R, is that regular? Yes.
Yes.
I didn't need a fancy tool. I can tell you by this. If it's this one this time and then here it's this and then it's just the tip, is that regular?
No.
Right. That's what we need to do next. So we're going to determine the rate, which we'll look at that. Then we're going to determine if it's regular. And here's the thing, commit these to memory, because if you do these steps every single time, you will never get it wrong. So if I give you all these steps and number 6 says identify this rhythm, by the end of this class, you should be able to do that no problem because you follow these steps. So just commit these steps to memory. First, we're going to determine the rate. Then we're going to determine if it's regular. Then we're going to look at the different waves. Do we have a P wave? Is there a P wave? We all know what it looks like, right? We have all seen it on our little graph, right? What a P wave is. It's going to look different, but is there one present? Ask yourself that. Ask yourself, and this was one thing that I from last class, like that. Everybody tried to overthink it. Don't do that. If I say, what is this? Is this regular? Is this, sinus rhythm? Go back to the basics. Start with number 1. Answer those questions. Even if you write them on a piece of paper. Heart rate. Okay, well, when I show y'all how to determine right, okay, my heart rate is 60. Is it regular? Yep, it's regular. So I'm going to write that down. Is there a P wave? Yep, there's a P wave present. Is there a P wave before every QRS? Yes, there is. And what does my P wave look like? So number 3, you make sure you identify all those things. Look for the P wave. I always look for the P wave first. QRS is easy to identify, but your whole cardiac conductions in one cycle should include what? We talked about this. A P wave. What else?
A segment.
Well, no, we're just talking about the waves. What does one include? A P wave, a QRS, and a T, right? So what are the waves that have to include in one? A P wave, a QRS, and a T wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see this? It's a P wave, it's a QRS, and a T. That is one heartbeat. That is one cardiac cycle. That is one pathway on the conduction system. So if I say to you, a normal sinus rhythm has to include these 3 things, what are you going to tell me?
A P wave, a QRS wave, and a T wave.
And a T. A P, a QRS, and a T. Just commit that to memory. A P wave, a QRS complex, and a T wave. That's normal, right? So again, number 3, is there a P wave? Oops, no. So I'm gonna write that on my paper. Oh, there's no P wave. Okay, woo, all right, well, I know it's a bunch of things now because I can tell you what it is if it doesn't have a P wave, but let's back up. Yes, there's a P wave, okay. Is there one P wave for every one QRS? That is normal. So normal is that we have to have one P, one QRS, and one T, right? If you have 3 P waves before each QRS, is that normal?
No.
No. So that's what you ask yourself. Is there a P before every QRS. Okay, yep, there's just one to one. That's what it should be. So here's my Q wave. Okay, yep, there's a Q. Now, my P wave, what does it look like? Is it positive? Is it rounded? Does it go up off the baseline? Is it notched? Is it flat? Because if it's those things, then that means something, right? It should always look the same. That's why you put your leads in the right place. So again, describe the qualities of the P wave. Round, up, regular, it looks good. There's one for every QRS. That's all. What are we going to do next? We're going to measure the PR interval. We already talked about what the PR interval is, right? What's the PR interval? It's the beginning of the
P wave.
to the beginning of the
R.
R wave.
QRS. It's the beginning of the QRS complex. So your PR interval starts at the beginning of this P wave where it lifts off that line and it goes until it ends and the QRS complex begins right here. You can do that with paper. You can do that with your calipers. You can do that with a pen to tell me if that's regular. How do we measure that? Because we already know that the blocks on this paper represent time, right? So if there's one of these blocks, one of these large blocks, that's your PR interval. If your PR interval is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks, then we already know that's what? 0.20 seconds.
0 seconds.
Right. So when we say here, measure the PR interval, okay, well, it was 5 blocks, so it's 0.20 seconds. So I'm gonna write that down. Then you're gonna measure your QRS. It's narrow. Remember before we said it had to be less than 0.12?
Mm-hmm.
You see, it's narrow. We want it to be sharp and narrow and thin and like precise. If it's wide, just think about that ventricle. It's like not beating to full capacity. It's kind of sludgy. It's kind of slow. So we want it to be sharp. So it has to be less than 0.12 in order to be normal. Right now, we're just thinking about normal, right? So on your 6 steps, you're going to measure the length of that QRS interval. And how do we do that? We measure what? The beginning of the QRS to the end, right? Point, right? The end of the QRS. That's right there. And that from there to there should be 0.12, which is how many little boxes?
20.
How many little boxes is 0.12?
3.
5 or 3.
3. Yeah, because think about it. If 0.04 is 1, 3 of those is what? 0.12. So your QRS complex better be smaller than these 3 boxes. You can eyeball that and tell, right? You can look at your graph paper and tell. So that's what we're doing. Those are our 6 steps. Anybody have questions about that? So again, in determining an EKG tracing, and I'm gonna stop here in a minute because I know it's after 9, but I need y'all to know these are your 6 steps. So whether you know anything else tonight, like moving forward, what the normal is for QRS, if you have to look at an EKG, you are going to ask yourself every single one of these, and you will be able to answer 6. So just know that, because on Thursday, I'm going to give y'all a quiz, and it is going to have this on here. And I want y'all to know I need to determine the rate. I need to look for regularity. I need to notice if there's a P wave. Is there one P wave for every QRS? And what that P wave looks like. I need to measure the PR interval, and I need to measure the QRS. If I do those 5 things, I can tell you what this rhythm is. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So, okay, this gives you how to count them, but we'll get to that. If you can read ahead, do that, because we need to get through this, but we will finish that Thursday. But again, I will email you copies of EKG paper, and hopefully they'll send you some. If you have access to printer, that'd be great. But I can at least send them to you with graphics on that, and maybe just a plain piece of paper so you can see what we're looking at, because we need to be able to measure those blocks. And she's going to mail out your calipers tomorrow, so you should get them by the end of the week, because then you can start using them. But honestly, you can use a piece of paper. Honestly, the best for me is to take a piece of paper and fold it and put it up next to that R to R and mark a block, mark it with your pen, and literally just move it back and forth. I'll make a video of that and I'll show y'all, and that way you'll have that to go by. Because I don't need calipers. I can use my piece of paper with my 2 little marks on it, and go across my paper and tell you if that heartbeat is regular, because they should be the same every time, the R to R. So just know those terms, and everything from this slide back that we've talked about, make sure you know those. I'm going to upload a quiz into Blackboard due before Thursday, at the beginning of class, so I know that y'all know what you're doing, okay? Do the stuff, and then just do the sheet in Blackboard. No, I'll just email it to you, but then do it and email it back to me. I want to make sure you guys know this stuff, because this will make all the difference. So everything we've done up to this point. Go back and look at 7 if you didn't do well on the test, and make sure you know why. But this stuff, start looking and thinking about. If you have questions, call me, email me, text me, whatever. We can go over it again, but I'll send you as much information as I can. Everybody
So the quiz wasn't what? Whoa, the quiz won't be in
Quiz.
Blackboard.
Let me just be quiet. Let me be quiet about the quiz. I did not mean to overspeed that. I'm not going to put a quiz. There will not be a quiz. Just do the review.
Great.
I will send y'all stuff, email for you to fill out and do. It's for your own practice. It's stuff we would be doing in class. So no quiz. No quiz. I might have thought about that, but I won't.
You freaked us out.
I know, right? I'm seeing who's awake still. I'm gonna see who's awake, because when on Thursday I'm gonna ask why nobody did their quiz. No, I'm just kidding. I will just send an email, because I'd rather do that than deal with Blackboard. So no quiz, just know it. That's all. Just know those things. Know the 6 steps. Know that stuff. Know the graph paper measurements. Okay? I'll send y'all as much stuff as I can.
Okay.
Everybody good? Anybody got questions? I know y'all ready to go. No? Don't forget to do the review stuff and send it in by Thursday. Okay?
Okay.
Well, y'all have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
All right, you guys. Hang in there.
Bye.
Bye.